Okay. So first of all, thank everyone who has come. And this is my first meeting, being in charge of the meeting, meaning I get to run the Zoom software, which I don't know that well, at the same time that I get to interpret the charts and so forth and talk about this topic. So I think I'm pretty good on the technical end, but I may be occasionally flying a little blind, and that'll be my learning curve. And I appreciate your patience with my learning curve if that's needed. So let's see. I'm going to give a brief introduction. Those of you that have been on meetings with me before have heard this. I'm going to keep it shorter. But just to summarize, I was very involved with Jeffrey Wolf Green Evolutionary Astrology School and Message Board for a long time, 12, 13 years. And it was very central in my life. I did a lot of readings for people. And I came to a certain point in my unfolding where life brought things into my life that I could no longer go on doing things the way that I had been doing them. And I've been going through a lot of personal growth change, and personal growth means, that's a nice way to say it, it's a death rebirth cycle, which is why I generally ask for people that are going through stuff, because most of us haven't been trained, taught, or nurtured very well about why we have to go through a bunch of stuff that's really not a lot of fun. And I found the typical, I won't say typical, but too often, for my taste, the astrological interpretations that people receive on their charts, whether from evolutionary astrology astrologers, regular astrologers, are basically kind of, they're not necessarily all that nurturing, because we are all conditioned and programmed through systems of good and bad, and reward and punishment. And if I'm having a lot of painful things in my life, there tends to be somebody there to tell me exactly why I deserve the painful things that I'm having. And maybe what I someday will be able to do to change that if I really apply myself in ways I have not done up until now. So none of that is very nurturing. And considering the fact that most of the way that we don't feel good about ourselves seems to boil down to nurturing that we didn't receive when we were younger. So being told even more about, not only have I screwed up in this lifetime, I've been doing this for a long time. I don't know, I won't even say screwed up. Not only have I been missing the boat and not understanding what I'm supposed to in this life, I've been doing that for a long time, which is pretty much guaranteed to make one feel even better about themselves, right? So not really. So as changes started occurring in my life, I started seeing that there are many ways that one can interpret or experience the events that occur in our lives, particularly the painful ones. I don't have too many people complaining that they have too many wonderful, amazing, fabulous experiences, relationships, etc., jobs, etc., going on. Mostly we're pained by the ones that are painful. So the question is, are we having those experiences as a punishment, so to speak, a punishment? In other words, I did something wrong, or this is all I deserve? Or is there a deeper reason why I may be having those experiences? And I began to realize, to see, to be shown that there actually are deeper reasons why we have the experiences that we have. And at this point in time, the majority of humans seem to be having a difficult time with their experiences. So there's not that many people around yet that are telling us about how we can see the beauty and wonder and even feel gratitude for things that we don't necessarily find very fulfilling or satisfying. So I have no magical answers. I don't think that any of us have any control over the amount, the type of experiences we're going to have, the amount of pain we're going to experience from them, and so forth. They're going to come at times. We're going to have them, and other times we're going to have more fulfilling experiences. What I'm seeing is that it's about changing my relationship to the events that occur in my life, to learn to see them in a different way, in a different light. And I don't mean, what I call sometimes white lighting, meaning everything's wonderful. I'm feeling like horrible, but there's somebody there telling me about how amazing it is. And in some cosmic way, I can say it is amazing, but it's definitely not amazing to the person that's experiencing it at the time they're experiencing it. And that's our reality, and that's what we need to work with. So I've been learning more about how to transform the way I look at things. And it's been my passion I've been working with people doing readings and whatnot for about 16 years, and it was definitely a passion for me to be able to help people with the circumstances they found themselves in. And what I will say is I've been learning a whole new way to look at those circumstances. So I'm finding that what comes to me now to share for some people is even more effective, because it's speaking to validating and nurturing and appreciating the experiences that a person has had, instead of more experiences of feeling guilted, shamed, and so forth by self and others for where we are. And for me, this is a work in process. I am engaged in this process every day inside myself. And I certainly have not mastered it, but I am feeling very deep changes going on in me. And this is the way that I am working with people now, is to try to shine light on the reasons why certain sorts of experiences may have been occurring, and that it's okay, that it's not a sign of doing anything wrong, and also what the lessons or gifts are, even in the very painful experiences. Because in the deepest sense, I've gotten clear, everything has a gift in it. But a lot of things that may come to us are not what we would at least initially, are not what we would consider gifts. They're the kind of gifts we would like to return to the store for a refund. But these gifts are delivered with no returns, and so they have lessons. They have lessons. I wanted to, so I came across a quote in the last week that I wanted to bring up here, because I found it like, yes. And the preface of this is that we biological beings, and we'll call it our ego or personality. When I use the term ego, there's nothing, it's not a judgment, it's not a bad thing. It refers to the personal part of ourselves. To me, I'm clear that each of us, we really are, everyone, souls, a divine spark, an eternal presence within us. And we are souls. And coming into a human body and a human form is part of the growing and the evolution in that soul. Because the very nature of life is to evolve, to grow. It's the very, we see in nature everywhere, the very nature of life is to grow. Even people who would insist there's no such thing and that's all malarkey, in reality, they too are growing, and their skepticism is part of their process of growing. It's just the way it is. And the universe gives us the privilege to think what I just said is utter crap and to denounce that very way of looking at things. And it's still true. I used to say sometimes the law of gravity has not been repealed. In other words, there are natural laws, and there are the way things are, and we can believe, we have the right and the option to believe anything that we want. Jumping ahead a little bit, I would say one of the reasons I'm seeing that pain exists in our lives, both physical, emotional, psychic pain, all kinds of pain, is it's a very effective way of getting our attention. It really, really is. And that's not to glorify pain. In a way, in certain ways, it can be like a medicine. And I'm going to talk more about that. And again, I'm definitely not glorifying pain, and I'm definitely not saying that when we are in pain, we should just not pretend not to feel the pain. In fact, I feel like it's really the opposite. We need to feel the pain even more, because part of why it keeps repeating is we keep trying to get away from it. And it's like an irony or a paradox that accepting the pain causes it to recede in intensity. Now I want to go to the quote, or one more thing. So we have this part of us in our nervous systems, our human nervous systems, and what's called the fight or flight response, which is actually fight, flight, or freeze. These are the three responses of trauma. These are the three responses that are built into the subconscious of a biological organism. They're in animals, they're in fish, they're in humans. And these are parts of us. This is their survival instinct. And it's the part in us that we're wired to keep alive, to stay alive. Even when we're feeling horrendous, there's something in us, even when we're wishing we could not be here, there's something in us that says, no, that's not right. And this is the survival instinct. Now, we have been taught in our modern world about the survival of the fittest. That is, the strong survive. Those that are willing to, we've learned that the animal that eats the smaller animal is the one that survives in all this. So I heard somebody talking this past week, quoting some psychologist, which I can't even remember who, but I loved this quote. Their point was that we are the products of generations and generations and generations of the survivors. Because we're all born here and we all came from somebody that came before us. And this goes back thousands and thousands of years. So their quote, and we've been told that this is because of the survival of the fittest. This is why capitalism is great, because the strong, survive. The quote was, "We're not the survival of the fittest, we're the survival of the nurtured," which I found really profound. In other words, those that have survived and that have prospered and taken things to new heights, not in selfishness, but in awareness, awakeness, in tuning in and bringing things in, inventions and medicine and things that help other people, to be in a place of wanting to serve and advance the world, advance, whether it's my family, my city, the whole world, the universe. I received nurture, and it's like I want to give back for that, because that nurture fed my emotions, fed my soul. So those of us that are dealing with a lot of pain and a lot of difficult childhood experiences, we didn't get the nurture. Now, it's important to even be able to receive that, because there can be a place inside that actually feels like, if I didn't receive nurture then, or when I had all this stuff on me, then I'm defective, or there's something wrong with me. It's kind of like internalizing the circumstances that were there for the child. And it's not about that. I feel that there are many people on earth now who are here, the souls who are here specifically, who came here consciously with the intention of wanting to advance life on earth. And and I don't mean by that just inventions and stuff like that. I mean to expand, to ground love that we know exists, that often feels so absent on earth. And we came in with soul missions, life purposes to fulfill, relating to wanting to live in a way that, whether it's on a small scale in my living room or on a larger scale by actions in the world, to bring something positive, caring, nurturing, loving into the world. And those of us who have that orientation, which on listening to things like this is usually about 100% or 98.5% of the people that even want to listen to this stuff. And we are very sensitive people. I looked at the charts of the 4 people who volunteered. They're all very sensitive people. And the noise and static on this planet and the pain on this planet is often overwhelming to very sensitive people. Now, here's the thing. Somehow or other, and it will be different for each person, those types of experiences are necessary for that particular person in that particular life. Now, we can, the way I was taught the karma thing, the way that we've been taught this in the West, that if your life is going happy and fun, then you have good karma, and if your life has not been happy and fun, then obviously you did crappy stuff to people along the line of what you're experiencing, and that's your karma. And if you're really, really good, somewhere in the next 800 lifetimes, maybe this will change, and you'll become enlightened. And I just have become very clear, the way that we have been taught is out of conditioning. Now, the world has needed the religions and philosophies that we have up until now, and they've served their purpose. But that time is passing, and that's part of the mission that we're sensing. If you resonate with what I'm talking about, you feel inside yourself your own sense, I have a mission or purpose for being here. And it's not this mission or purpose is not a job. It's not a career. It's a way of life. It's a way of living. It's a way of overcoming, it's a way of releasing from the conditioning and the lack of nurture that we did not receive. Now, why did we not receive nurture? Because the people that we had as our parents, as our family, they were not nurtured. They didn't know how to nurture. They were filled with their own pain. This doesn't make it right when abusive things were going on, when neglect is a form of abuse. If a child, this is what I have learned, because I had good parents, but I was emotionally neglected. And I have learned that actually is a form of abuse, and it's often a severe form of abuse, because the child does not feel that they have value as a result of this, because they were not valued. So that's why I have been realizing in the last 3 to 4 years that the key to all of this, to turning around our lives, and through the example of us turning around our lives, other people go, what's going on with that person? That there's something different going on in them. And I'll tell you one thing that can come from pain and difficulty is that a lot of compassion. There can be anger too. I mean, just in general, like, well, I have to go through all this. But the pain that one experiences can, in the highest sense, create an empathy, a sympathy, an understanding of the pain that other people experience. Anybody. Because it's been lived, it's been walked. You know, I am told there's an old Native American expression about don't judge a person until you've walked a mile in their moccasins. Well, if you've walked a mile or 5 miles in a lot of pain, then you have walked the miles of many people in their moccasins. And this creates a sense of empathy, of the capacity for empathy and for caring and for people feeling understood. Because when we have experienced a lot of pain, how often do we actually feel that somebody understands what we have been through, what we have felt, and where we're going? I don't think it happens that often. And in a lot of ways, what these wounded children that are within us, the wounded child, the wounded children within us, have wanted all along is simply to be acknowledged, recognized, loved, accepted. Wanted somebody to care. I'm in all this pain. I want somebody to hold me, to nurture me, to tell me that I'm okay. And those parts still exist in us. And then as we become adults, so we're trained, we are in the world and we do stuff on the adult level, and we work and we support ourselves and we have families and all this. And yet inside of us are these hurt children. Now the gist of it is, and this is the core of what I have been learning, the core of codependence in relationships, the core of people pleasing, the core of needing the approval of external people, is because we feel we feel unworthiness, we feel guilt, we feel shame within ourselves in these deep places. We may have done a lot of therapy, we may have studied psychology, we may have talked on the conscious level out our issues, our problems, identified the ways that our parents didn't do what we would have hoped for. But the gist of it is, and it's only really starting to be understood now, the issues that we have are not cognitive. In other words, our minds, our adult self, we're good. We can understand the principles in our brains. It's where when you hear people saying, well, I understand all that, but I'm still doing the same things. I still fall into the same repeating patterns. I still get depressed. I still, get angry at people and flare up, and I don't know why, and all that. And it's because these are the parts in ourselves these are the parts we've pushed away, we've repressed, we've kept down because we've had to survive. So we haven't done anything bad. We needed to do these things to survive. And lo and behold, it turns out that what these parts actually want is to be loved. And so we have been looking for them to be loved from partners, from trying to reform relationship with parents, from anyone that we want to impress or like put on a good face, like the smiling face that you're supposed to walk around with when you're going to places where there's people you don't know, even if you're not really feeling very smiley. And this is all, if you think about this, if you look at the places that are within us as little children, and there can be more than one. It can have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old and a 9-year-old, all this places inside that are unfulfilled. And basically what it is maybe it was the angry kid or the whiny kid, or the very shy kid. And they got a lot of crap for being that way. You learned that people don't like that person. They don't like the depressed part of me. They don't like the sad part of me. They don't like the angry part of me. And so we learn to just not let those parts come up. Now that's what's called the shadow. And the healing and the understanding and the insight into why I've had all these experiences actually seems to come from beginning to embrace the shadow. In other words, if I was an angry child, which I was at times, people don't like that, didn't like that person. They don't like the angry person. I get that message loud and clear. So you just stuff the anger. All right, I'm not angry. I'm just going to stuff it. But I am. The angry child is angry or hurt because people are not, is not getting the nurture, the acceptance. And so I got to make this a little more concise or brief. The gist of it is forming a different relationship with that part of myself. If I have the angry child, I am going to love that angry child exactly the way that he is. I'm going to apologize to that angry child about how I haven't treated him right or given him the nurture that he's been looking for all along. And that I'm going to change my way because I'm understanding all he wants is to be accepted. He wants to be treated right. He wants to be understood. And nobody or very few people have been able to do that. So I'm going to offer that to him or her. It can be the sad child. It can be the child that grew up being told that they were stupid, that child thinks they're stupid and they feel guilt and shame about this, that to embrace those parts. You're not stupid. You know, a lot of people I find briefly that are considered stupid actually have emotional intelligence, which is not that valued in our world, and less so intellectual intelligence. And because they didn't have the sharpest brain to memorize a bunch of facts, they got told that they were stupid. And that's just completely wrong. They had unique gifts. This is not just wording games. They had unique gifts because each one of us has unique gifts. So on Valentine's Day, that's why I wanted to do this talk in this way. This is a day for loving a partner. And so if you have a partner, great. The partner loves you, you love them. But I'm also saying, even to people who are partnered, it's loving ourself. Loving self, if you're in a relationship, will deepen that relationship. Loving self, if you're not in a relationship, you're actually in relationship with the different parts within yourself. And to love those parts, to literally practice loving the parts, even looking in the mirror regularly and finding the parts that I don't like and asking them, what do you need? What do you need? What do you really need? What do you really want? And really listening to what they say, to what they have to say. Because every part of us is great, is perfect as we are. These are not the messages most of us received, but it's true. It's true. And we can begin to experience that. And that's the healing process. And it starts turning around when I start changing my relationship with myself. So I now have 2:45. I want to do, Francisco, I'm going to do your chart third. I'm going to do, we're going to talk with Jody first, Silly second, you, and you third. I want to put the women first in honor of Valentine's Day. So Jody wrote, is it right if I share some of this, Jody?
You do whatever.
Okay. So Jody says she loves love. And in the first part of her life, she was in emotionally controlling relationships. And then she realized that she was allowing this to occur. In the last 14 years, she's been the way I would put it is, you've been more claiming your own power by being less, if she says non-committal relationships. And I want to say, consider if part of that is just your holding your power. She would now, and she's been single for a long time, going on 5 years, and has been maturing in terms of what she would like. She would like to be in a relationship. And she says she's realized she doesn't have a fear of commitment. She has a passionate love of freedom. And we'll talk about that. I'm going to try to share your chart. This will be my first chart sharing.
Yay.
I practiced. Let's see. So this is, I missed part of a letter on your name. I apologize. Can everybody see this? Are you seeing this
Yep.
Yes.
chart? Okay, good. So this is Jody's chart. So we're starting with the Pluto Uranus in the 6th house in Virgo, which in and of itself, and let's see what else we have. We have a South Node in Capricorn in the 10th house. We have a bunch of planets in Aquarius in the 11th house. And we have Venus in the 12th house on the ascendant, but just barely in the 12th house. And so, the gist of this to me is with the Pluto, 6th house Pluto, Virgo, we're starting, this was let me sidetrack for a second here. When I was talking about the type of people, the type of souls that are attracted to this work, many of us are wired kind of the opposite of a narcissist who feels their personality is based around superiority. Many of we sensitive types, our personality / ego is based around inferiority. The ego is constantly feeling like it has to do this, that, and the other thing, has to do stuff in order to have value, in order to have a purpose. And typically, 6th house Pluto people, Virgo generation people, Virgo planets, start with a sense of not of feeling wrong or less than, inadequate, and so forth. And they oftentimes will draw in people, we oftentimes will draw in people who will let us know about that. Oh, I saw, let's see, where was I? An interesting thing in Jody's chart from EA perspective is that Chiron is exactly on her Pluto polarity point, which is very significant. And now she also has South Node in Capricorn in the 10th house, which basically has been a long history of emotionally controlling relationships. With the 6th house orientation, oftentimes what we might say controlled through creating a sense of guilt or inadequacy. Having 5 planets in the 11th house in Aquarius, she is probably not very happy about all of that. And yet, in the repeating kind of loops or psychological patterns that we get into, not necessarily knowing how to, it's like, I want to break this loop, and I don't really know how to break the loop. And I keep finding myself in the loop. Let me switch back here. Because I like looking at the person. How does that feel? Does that feel fairly accurate?
Absolutely.
Good.
In 2000, there was an epiphany of, I'm drawing this to myself. How do I stop this? This pattern, it's a pattern. And I clearly saw that. So everything you're saying is exactly true, but I love what you said about this Pluto validating that part. I completely resonate with that. Yes, all of it.
Good. And you see, I feel like that I'd take the chart down. This is because I can't see the people when I have the chart up, and I like looking at the people while the talk's going on. But I think that Chiron, the Chiron in the 12th house in Pisces, to me, because that's right on your Pluto polarity point. In other words, that's where your soul is going. And that speaks very much to what I was just talking about. This is like deeply, the wounds there, let me see. Do you have a background in this life of religious kind of stuff that was in childhood that was also kind of not nurturing?
The first thing that comes to my mind is that in a Japanese upbringing, there's altars at everyone's house. So I used to pray all the time. I was the child that would run away and go pray and put incense and do all of that. And I had some of my family were very Christian. And I was deemed to be going to hell because I would put incense on the altar and I didn't believe in God. And I said, but I do believe in God. So there was this dichotomy between
Yes.
I believe in God, but yet I'm this spiritual being that I talk to plants and stuff too. I grew up
Yes.
in Hawaii. So for me, all of nature is also a spiritual experience for me, a religion, but I didn't fit in anywhere in terms of religion, quote unquote religion. So yeah.
What I will say is if you have 5 planets in Aquarius in the 11th house, you're not going to fit in very many places. Because you're kind of intending to create your own reality that others will perhaps follow into. But yeah, that's perfect. You're going to hell thing. That's what I mean. I look at a chart. Not every person that has this kind of layout is going to have that kind of experience, but oftentimes they do. And that's the kind of conditioning that I'm talking about. In other words, that part of you, and it's good that you have this other strong part. I know, I have your chart over here. I can look at it. Good, let's see. Yeah, but because you found through nature and other sources that place, what I would call the spiritual nurture. And so part of the healing for whatever is left, and you've done a lot of it from what you've written, but part of the healing from whatever is left is we just want the parts in you that got conditioned with that, you didn't believe you were going to hell, but I also feel like, I feel like if it's a child that's being told they're going to hell, even if they don't believe it, that's got to create some kind of fear in them somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's like,
right.
Those parts are the parts we want to nurture. Those are, and here's another thing. We don't need to go looking for this stuff. I hope y'all will like this one. We have been taught that we have to do all this spiritual work.
Yes.
We don't have to do anywhere near all this spiritual work.
Okay.
That's part of our conditioning.
Right.
The work comes to us. The work comes to us. And it is like, this is the part I didn't get into before, because as we are relaxing our nervous systems from the fight, flight, freeze response, we start having experiences, and this is especially true for people, that's why I like people that have had, some difficulties in their life, because we learn that even though we were in all of these difficult, sometimes crazy for some people, situations, you come to a certain point and you see, not because somebody's telling you in some new age way, you see, you experience that life was right there with you through all of that, even though you didn't realize it at the time. That it's like a mom, when a mom has to let their children do things that they know that the child's not going to like doing, that they're good for the child. And I don't mean abusive, I mean just like growing up. Like when the child has to come to certain points and they need to step forward and take on, it's a natural time for them to learn how to do something for themselves, for example, or they have to do something that they're afraid of. And the mom knows that they need to do that. And it hurts the mom because she doesn't want her children to have to experience pain. But being a good mom means that they have to reach out a little bit. And it's like the universe is like this great mom. You can experience that through nature. It's one and the same thing.
Right.
There is this universal force of love that is behind us every instant. Even when we feel our worst, even when we feel undeserving. Now, we don't experience this, and nothing I'm saying here should be taken as if I don't experience that, then I'm really messed up or he's crazy, although you can think I'm crazy if you want, that's all right. But nothing I'm saying here is that there's any lack in why you haven't had that experience if you haven't. I'm telling you that I moved through this feeling very alone in the world, like everything was up to me. If I didn't do it, it wasn't going to happen. And what I'm saying here also doesn't mean that I'm suggesting you just go to bed for 3 weeks at a time and, you know, the universe is going to put food on your door every night. No, it's not that either. But we are really, really supported in life. And because of our fight or flight responses and the traumas that we have experienced, we don't see that all that often. So what I'm saying is the way to experience that more is when we start practicing loving ourself. And it's a practice at first, because as we're bringing it up, it can actually at times bring up even more of the parts about self that we really don't like. That's a natural part of healing, because when I am in healing, then more stuff comes up that wants to be healed because I have more capacity to feel it and to be okay with it than I had before. It wants to be nurtured. So it starts coming up. But we start experiencing, I can tell you from experience, you spontaneously start realizing in little glimpses, little momentary insights, feelings of even vision, just in your normal life. Like, there's more going on here than I thought. And then you start feeling sometimes, I don't know what this is, but I went through all that and it was really hard, but all of a sudden I'm feeling like I wasn't as alone as I thought I was. And what I'm saying is, what I'm realizing is that a whole lot, in other words, the universe is on our side. Life is on our side, however you want to call it, God, universe. Life is on our side. And it kind of whispers in our ears now and then about, hey, it's really okay. It's okay. I know this is hard right now, but it's okay. And what I'm experiencing is that the more nurturing I'm becoming to myself, the more often I'm having experiences like that. And the more I have experiences like that, the easier it is for me to feel nurturing with myself. So it's kind of like shifting an entire inner dynamic or process. I wanted, what do we got? 2:45, 4 o'clock. I got to move on pretty quickly, but I wanted to. I found it very interesting that it's like the kind of relationship that you or anybody really, really wants. I would say what I call a conscious relationship, which is not a codependent or dysfunctional, is two people that both value their freedom. It's not. It's even more than freedom. It includes freedom, but it's like your individuality because you're unique,
Right.
especially with 5 planets in the 11th house. But we're all unique. 7 billion people. There's no two of us remotely alike. So each one of us has a unique spark that we are intended to put forth. Not everybody's going to like it. Not everybody's going to understand it. I also say I am learning that when somebody doesn't like where I'm coming from, most of the time, that's not about me. I am the way that I am or what I'm doing or what I'm saying is triggering an unresolved wound in them. And I'm actually, even though they may react in anger, they may shut down. These are the responses of the fight or flight. They may get defensive and push back. They may shut down. They may just write you off and all this. But that's about what's going on in them, because who you are, how you are, has triggered something in them that wants to come up for healing. Their own little child. They're not aware of it. At this point in time, the majority of people, I would say, are not really consciously looking to do this kind of work, to have this kind of awareness. Now think about this. Why do people that are spiritually oriented want to do this kind of work and be willing to face these parts in ourselves? How about a major reason, because it gets so terribly painful, I can't stand it anymore. What do I have to do to change this? And without that degree of discomfort, it's a degree of discomfort that you can't mask. And all the things that people try to get around that, drugs, alcohol, bigger houses, more money, all this, at a certain point, stop working. They're not providing the relief. You start seeing the relief comes from inside of me. And then you can start seeing that the point of all that I've been through in the first place was to get me to the point of realizing it's all in me. Yeah. And I have the ability to change it. And the leveling of self is I am seeing is the key to changing my experience. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop I'll have no more painful experiences. It means I'm going to have a very different response to the experiences that come up. I'm not going to try to push away. I don't have to like them. I don't like painful experiences, but I can also see what they're adding into my life, and then I can feel value in them. It gets crazy enough at a certain point, you actually can start feeling, hard to believe, but I'm actually feeling grateful for some of these things that have been driving me crazy lifelong, because I'm starting to see what they're adding into my life. So, very interesting. Thank you. Let's, what have we got? I only got 15 minutes. Okay, let's do Celie. And I need to put her chart up.
Steve, you can take an extra 15 minutes if you like.
Oh, good. I want. Let me see. Let me get Celie's chart. and I want to share this screen. Okay, so here is Seeley's chart. Oh, Seeley says, this is it all right if I share this, Seeley? Is she responding? I can't see.
Yes, yes, it's okay. I was on mute. It's storming here.
Great, thank you. So Seeley says, and her personal story of love and pain and loss is my middle name. I like the beat in that. And she's experienced a lot of suffering. We don't need to go into all, we won't go into all the details, but she's experienced a lot of traumatic events. She's yet to experience a truly equal and loving relationship. Through this, she's learning to love herself and down into the shadow and feeling great compassion for the human unconscious condition, myself included. I know exactly what I was talking about. And she's discovering divine love through following this process. And so you're like a testimony that what I was just speaking about actually is a process, and it's there for all of us. In her chart, we have a third house, Pluto in Virgo, retrograde, 7. And interestingly enough, her Chiron is 1 degree off her Pluto polarity point. So that's pretty good, having 2 charts in a row. That's not that common. And South Node in the 8th house in Aquarius. It's conjunct Saturn in Aquarius and pointing to the 2nd house. And interestingly, the ruler of the South Node and Saturn, Uranus, is also in the 2nd house and essentially conjunct the North Node, 10 degrees wide conjunction, but conjunct. And so when you have, and we have Chiron in the 9th house and Mars in Pisces, and when you have South Node conjunct Saturn in Aquarius in the 8th house, yeah, you're going to have a lot of loss and a lot of trauma resulting from that loss in most cases. So also, and we have a 3rd house. Okay, so 3rd house, Pluto in Virgo. On the Chiron in the 9th house. Okay, so what has been your process as far as transitioning from a left brain orientation to a right brain orientation?
I would say that I've always been right brain orientated, and I just had to remember that and honor that and allow the gifts of that to integrate fully within me.
Very good answer. And so the loss and so forth that you've gone through, I mean, it's kind of, kind of amazing that one
Yes.
can go through the kind of experiences that you have been through and come out the other side with a natural spirituality and awareness awakening within. And, this reminds me, this is the cocoon process, which is 8th house Scorpio Pluto process. And basically, what this means, this is the death rebirth process. And I've experienced this emotional, psychological, spiritual birth, first the death, then the birth, is very similar to giving human birth, to birthing a child. It's an awkward process. It's, my little humor about it is I have yet to hear a woman say that she enjoyed or had fun during her childbirth, and yet they all are amazed by it. And I think that's a very good metaphor for these life-changing processes, that they profoundly transform us, and they're not easy. And I want to add something that's been coming up for me lately, both for myself and other people, that to me, it takes a tremendous amount of courage in a soul/person to volunteer to go through this process. Because from the human level, you do not know where it's going to wind up. You don't know if you're going to survive. At times, you don't know if you even want to survive. And yet somehow we persevere, and then that period or time or set of experiences starts to shift. And like, oh my goodness, how did this happen? And that this is how the process of life works. In fact, what's coming to me to say is this human experience is not for sissies. And I'm talking about spiritual sissies, because it takes, when we're in a growth life, a growth path, it takes everything that we have at times to do this, just like it takes a mother everything that she has to give birth, or many other experiences in life where a person finds that they have to go beyond the capacities or reserves that they even thought they had. And we grow from this, we stretch from this, and that this actually is a lot of the point. And out of this, we start waking up. I'll add another piece to this, that to me at this time, what's going on the planet is that for everyone and heading into our future, which I feel is why things are very chaotic, because we are shifting here. Soul consciousness is descending into Earth. In other words, it's time on this planet, a whole lot more humans are going to start waking up. And in order to wake up, we're asleep, so to speak, which is hypnotized because of our conditioning, because of all we learned from parents and their parents and their parents and their parents, and well-meaning teachers and an educational system and all this, which is not about who we really are. And so we're deeply identified with our personality, with our ego, as who I am. And the ego, when this waking up is going on, the ego feels like it's going to die, like it's dying.
It does.
And in a sense, it is, but it's more like it's transforming. But to the ego, from its perspective, it feels like it's dying, and it's freaked out. And it brings up all the trauma that's inside, whatever anyone's particular defense structure is. You're going to argue, you're going to be mad, you're going to be a victim, you're going to just shut down and act like, nothing going on here. All of these are strategies the ego adopts, just simply trying to survive. It's not being bad. It's exactly what's supposed to happen. It's the way the process works, the waking up process. And little by little by little, Little by little, the, the process, once it's initiated, doesn't stop. It can slow down at times. It can seem like it's like that's all over now, but it's not. Once it's alive inside, we're on that journey, and it's taking us where it's taking us. And we have no control over what it's going to look like, where we're going to wind up. And where we're going to wind up. And to the ego, that's very scary because it wants to know, where am I going? Where am I? If it involves life changes, like I'm making less money now because something happened, then it starts freaking out about, well, how am I going to get through this and all of this? These are all steps, parts of the process of waking up. It's a known process of how it works. And it is, it can cause people I've been very, very low key for going on 3-4 years now, compared to what I used to do. And I thought I was low key before. Sometimes it's like I can barely do anything. But it's not that I'm doing nothing, it's that I'm being readjusted, realigned inside, and that takes a lot of time, effort, and energy. So we live in a distraction culture. You need to be busy all the time doing something. Why? Because when I'm busy all the time, then I don't have to feel what I'm feeling. The waking up is becoming comfortable with what we're feeling, even when we're not comfortable with it. I have said it at times, I'm becoming comfortable with not feeling comfortable, or I'm becoming more comfortable with not feeling comfortable, because I'm not in charge. And if you really look at it, the idea of comfort, simply comes from stuff we like. And discomfort is stuff we don't like. As we're starting to experience more and more that all of it is coming from the soul and is divine, then we're less judgmental about what I like and what I don't like. I don't have to like it, but I don't shut down. I go, oh, life is bringing me another lesson here. And I'm going to grow from this. It's really uncomfortable, and I wouldn't mind if it ended quickly. But I get that there's a reason for this, and it's part of my unfolding path. This is the shift that starts going on inside as one starts looking at life from this perspective. Another way to say it is, we start looking at life from the perspective of the soul rather than of the personality. The personality is concerned about this particular lifetime and what's going to happen to me and what am I feeling like and all this. And the soul is looking at the perspective, I've been here forever, I've had, 897, whatever, human lifetimes, and this is one of them, and it's going to end, and sure as the sun comes up tomorrow, another one is following that one, and another one is following that one. So I don't need to get all that worked up, because in the biggest sense, nothing really bad can happen. I mean, for most of us, we think the worst thing that can happen is we die. But there isn't even, from the perspective of the soul, there's not even really anything such as death. We're just going from one, they're like chapters in a big novel. You got a novel with like a couple thousand chapters in it. And so one lifetime is one chapter. And we are here to play that chapter out. We are here to inhabit that chapter. But we also start realizing that's just a chapter. And to keep it in perspective, nothing really truly bad can happen to me. meaning, yeah, I could have something, I could, I could be maimed, I could be killed, I could be raped, I could have very difficult things occur, but I'm still here. I'm still here. And as you start looking at things more this way, start realizing that even when it's painful things that are going on, there's a reason for it. We don't have to know why. We can't know why. The ego wants to know why. The soul just says, I don't know why this is happening, but that's what's happening, and I trust the process, so okay, on with it. And the big question changes from why is this happening to what do I need right now, or what do I feel? Okay, I want to go on to Francisco, and thank you. Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let me get Francisco's chart. Share. Okay. So Francisco wrote a somewhat longer piece, if I can find it. Yeah. And Francisco's is coming from the Mexican culture.
Right.
And he has had, let's just say that he's had a lot of experiences in his life of women who were angry with males, with men. And his father wasn't around. He didn't have a good male role model. He's got some substance issues. He doesn't feel, he says in Mexico, the male stereotypes are on one hand macho, on the other hand wimp or gay, and he's neither of those. And he was married and has 4 sons, and he had kind of a similar experience with his wife as he had younger. He's had people project a lot of intense stuff on him, and he wants to develop his sense of self-worth and self-love, and he would really like to have a relationship with a healthy woman who can see who he really is. And that's pretty reasonable desire. Pretty reasonable desire. And I looked at his chart, which I have up here. And so one of the first things I saw is, well, he's got a Cancer moon in the 12th house. And for a man, that is one of the most, that's pretty doggone sensitive. Pretty doggone sensitive for a male. The Cancer moon in general, and put it in the 12th house. And, in cultures, United States, Mexico, and a lot of other places, I mean, we're beginning in the U.S. to be able to hold some space for sensitive males, but it certainly hasn't been it's certainly not been an easy thing to be for a long time, to feel and to want to come from a nurturing place. So we have Pluto in the 2nd house in late Virgo. And what is this? He doesn't have Chiron opposing his Pluto, but he has it opposing his Uranus.
Right.
And we have a south node in the 12th house, which is another very sensitive position in Leo. And moving over to Mars conjunct the north node in Aquarius, 6th house. And his Chiron is in the 8th house in Aries. And that, I mean, that's an opposing Uranus for, you know, it's this sense of loss. I'm getting also with like a south node in the 12th house and a moon in the 12th house. It can very much be tied with a kind of an underlying sense of disappointment about the way things, you know, this isn't exactly what I was expecting, you know, to have all this, because when you have a very sensitive small boy, is going to have, in 12th house, is going to have a lot of sensitivity. I mean, you're on observation very masculine. You're masculine. But it's like having an emotional sensitivity.
Right.
That is, this is a child that really wants a lot of nurture. A lot of nurture from a mom, from females, from a woman, someone. As a child, I'm talking about. And not receiving that is very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. And especially having repeated experiences with we've got people in the family and siblings, women that don't like men, have a lot, which means to me they have had a lot of traumatic experiences coming from men. And here, this sensitive boy gets born into a family that has that kind of dynamic. And that's, you know, that's a difficult beginning. It's not the nurturing. It's not the nurturing. This making sense?
Completely.
See, again, I would say that the, you know, it's like, it's the last sentence. This is what I wanted to comment on. I want to say this very, in other words, in your wording, help me relate with a healthy woman who sees the real me.
Right.
And that is a beautiful sentiment. And there's something in there also, like subconsciously, that is like the part of you that is still the small boy that just wants his mom to love him. And that is a very beautiful sentiment. That is nothing to be, you know, I should be over that or any of that. It's very 12th house. It's like pure and sincere and innocent. And the gist of this is that it's like through self-worth and self-love, it's for you to get clear on the real you. The real you. And I get it, parts of you see this and know it. But other parts are hurt, and they almost can't believe it, or they doubt it, or they're just, upset about various things that have happened. And it's kind of like for you embracing all those parts of yourself, because the self-worth comes. I am getting that for you doing some mirror work, as they call it, would be a good thing, because I see you have a beautiful innocence and like kindness I see in you. And it's like connecting with those parts of yourself. Looking in the eyes is a really good way. And you're undoubtedly going to see things. I mean, most of us don't like looking in the mirror when we walk by it. I'm turning myself to look in it and to offer love to who I'm seeing there. And I'm suggesting something like this for you, because from the experiences that you've had and the way that, in other words, you were rejected by all these women that were, as a child, that were close to and growing up, that were close to you, that were in your family, that you really cared about. And they're upset about men, didn't have anything to do with you, but they took it out on you because you were there.
And I was young and weak, and the other men were adult and stronger than they were, so it was easier to take it on me than taking it on them, right?
Yes, yes. But see, you have, because you're very, very sensitive, so some of those emotions that were, the stuff that was dumped on you have imprinted deeply in you emotionally. So there's parts of you, this is like the reason for not having a sense of self-worth, because there's nothing wrong with this, but you came to believe some of what was being thrown at you, because you were hearing it from all these people that you loved and cared about. And it's like reversing that or clearing that out is developing. I think looking in the mirror would be really good. I mean, regularly, just for a minute or two, but, ongoing, like during the day, and really looking into your eyes and connecting with the beautiful, soft part of you and appreciating it. And you may need to cry at times. It may bring out very deep-seated grief, sadness, and anger. And it's like connecting with all of those parts, because they want your love. They didn't get what they needed, and you can help heal them. And as they start feeling better about themselves, you're going to start feeling better about yourself. And over time, as you're feeling good about yourself, then you're able to attract an emotion, a healthy woman, which to me is a woman that has done a lot of this similar emotional work, because they have been through it. Because otherwise, what tends to happen is if I feel really bad about myself and somebody comes along that is like essentially healthy, if there is such a thing, and starts loving me, then I'm going to start feeling like doubting that I'm worthy to receive the love. And that creates all kinds of stuff. So it's like, this is like a complex puzzle, and how do I resolve it? And I say the piece that will help you resolve it, the piece that will, one second. the piece that will help you resolve it is for you to be developing the self-worth within yourself. And the trap that goes with that is when you start developing some self-worth and self-love, and then you have a bad day, and you're like, well, you're not loving yourself now. And that's what I call like beating yourself up about beating yourself up. Just have to stop it there. Like, that's the old pattern. It's like, it's okay. I couldn't put time into loving myself in the last 2 days because whatever. And it's okay, because I'm getting back on it now. I'm getting back on this track now. There's a lot of beauty in you, and connect with it. Connect with it and see it yourself. And be okay with any parts that come up that still think you're not worthy. They're okay too. They've been really hurt. I have to stop.
I know.
We're done. I would like to go on a little more with you, but we're done. I thank you, everybody, for being on this call. And I am going to be doing, I don't know, about 6 or 7 of these talks this year. And I think they're going to be different variations of this, because this is the type of work I'm feeling drawn to do. And I am, just to put it out, if anybody who has volunteered sometime later in the year feels like, well, they'd like a little more, I am good with that. I'm good with that. So if it feels right for somebody, I thank you all for participating. I think it takes some courage to be a volunteer on a talk like this, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Steve.
You're very welcome.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you.
Valentine's.
Happy Valentine's Day to all of us.
All right.
Thank you.
See, bye.
Bye.
Bye.